Let me start by wishing our chairperson many more happy returns of the day, sir. It's nice to have you as the chairperson today. And I think, unfortunately, we are missing a lot of panelists today, but we have 50% of our panelists seem to be missing. But I still think that the remaining of our panel is good enough to contribute and make up the panel to 150%. So, not too worried about that. We have really good, we have stalwarts in our panel who are present here today. Can I go to the next slide? Niti and Mani are unable to make it, and I think some people are trying to reach Dr. Abhishek. He should be online anytime. I hope he can join us as soon as he's online. Dr. Bhavna and Dr. Shailesh and Dr. Tilak are online with us. Next slide, please. Dr. Raja actually has covered a lot of ground on his talk, but this is a panel, and I do not think that we can really cover 10 or 12 sort of breakthroughs in 30 minutes. So let's. I have just divided into broad categories, which include something in surgery, something in radiation, and something in systemic therapy over the next 30 minutes. And of course, we'll also cover aspects of what Dr. Raja covered over the last wonderfully over the last 25 minutes. So let's start with potentially operable pancreatic cancer. Next slide, please. Um, Dr. Shailesh. Dr. Shailesh.
Sir, Dr. Shailesh is busy with the patient. He'll be trying to join as soon as possible.
Oh, okay. So anyhow, we shall go ahead. I shall redirect the question to non-surgeons. So I think we'll get a very nice perspective from the non-surgeons. Um, there is no recommendation from ASCO for neoadjuvant chemotherapy, whereas NCCN does say that you could consider it for some patients. Dr. Bhavna, in your practice, would you ever consider referring taking on a patient with operable pancreatic cancer upfront? Would you be worried that you would lose the patient while he's on neoadjuvant chemotherapy becoming inoperable, or would you say that no, this is just biological selection, he's going to do well if he's good biology, or do badly, but that's biology?
So I think for me, I'm quite passionate about considering neoadjuvant therapy for resectable pancreatic cancer, and quite a few of the surgeons I have worked with would prefer to do that as well, because about 50 to 60 of our patients do not actually get adjuvant therapy. And we know that from the PRODEED study, median survival of 55 months, we haven't seen that with anything else in pancreas. So systemic therapy is very important. And how many patients who, maybe 10% patients may not go on to surgery, but those are the patients who probably do not need surgery at all. And a Whipple's is quite an extensive surgery with, we do not have service reconfiguration in India. So about the mortality could be up to 10 to 20%, and if the centers are not high volume and not doing about more than 20 Whipple's a year.
So point taken, point taken. The thing is, there will be very few patients who actually fall off the surgical ambit, but a lot of patients could benefit. But this is, we are talking about operable pancreatic cancer. So
we're talking resectable only, where
resectable,
do not get adjuvant therapy.
Yes. So can we go to the next slide, please? So the National Cancer Database, which included stage 3 operable pancreatic cancer, actually found that there is some sort of a benefit, overall survival benefit with a resectable pancreatic cancer. But mind you, this is a retrospective look at operable pancreatic cancer. But as Dr. Bhavna has actually, put the finger on the pulse, there is some sort of benefit with these patients. Next slide, please. Dr. Abhishek, has he joined? I think he's not here. Dr. Tilak, if you would choose, what would you choose? Would it be, something like the Prodigy, you're going to go all guns blazing with FOLFIRINOX, or slightly gentler regime? I'm talking about a very fit, good performance status patients. I'm not talking about an unfit patient. So would you go with a gentler regime like Gem, Nab, Paclitaxel, or would you prefer chemoradiation upfront? What would be your what would be your poison?
So if the patient is fit and can tolerate FOLFIRINOX, that would be my go-to regime. However, the data from the GEM nab-paclitaxel study is nearly as good, it appears. So if the patient is not a diabetic and he's otherwise in good performance status, I would like to go with FOLFIRINOX as of now.
Dr. Rajak, if you're here, can I request you to join our panel? We're missing a lot of panelists. It would be great. If Raja sir would consent to join, he can be unmuted. And I can see Dr. Gopinath, senior surgeon, also. I can see sir face. Dr. Gopinath, can you just join us for with comments for panels? We are missing a surgeon also in our panel. If that's okay with the
Okay.
Good morning, Dr. Gopinath. So we have a senior surgeon. Now, how comfortable are you, in a Whipple's setting when a patient has received chemoradiation upfront rather than chemotherapy? Neoadjuvant chemoradiation, and then how comfortable would you to go ahead with the Whipple's? What are the technical challenges there?
See, in a chemoradiation setting, we have a lot of technical problems. We have to do it. Otherwise, a good head lesion, resectable lesion, good neoadjuvant chemotherapy settings, there should not be major problem. Only in a chemoradiation setting, borderline pancreatic cancers, resectable, if the bulky tumors are there, that should not be a problem. Only chemoradiation we see a lot of problem, because sometimes you may see the fibrosis occurring there, getting the planes and other kind of resectability becomes very difficult. These are the few observations what we have noticed. We do not have a large volume of data on chemoradiation and surgical procedures. Chemotherapy, yes, once the tumor shrinkage is there, surgical procedure will become more comfortable.
So point taken, it might be more difficult for a Whipple's, which is a difficult surgery in the best of settings to after a chemoradiation. Dr. Bhavna, if you could just chip in, you have a large body of work in GI cancers. How would you feel about chemoradiation in the upfront setting? If you do, what sort of regime would you, send the patient across to?
So, I'm guided completely by the surgeons. And as Dr. Gopinath very rightly said, most surgeons would prefer chemotherapy. And given the negative data with LAPO7 and other trials in locally advanced setting with radiation, I think I am not happy incorporating radiotherapy. But yes, the PREOPANC data was quite exciting that, it had radiotherapy. The R0 resections were more in patients who had radiotherapy. And with the newer techniques, I think my radiation oncology colleagues would say that, with SBRT, the results should be better. But my preference currently is to just go with the neoadjuvant chemo. And, if the CA19-9 is rising, sometimes I would change the chemo. I would do BRCA mutation testing. And the first PATH CR I had was with gemcisplatin. So I think this is what I would go for a neoadjuvant strategy.
Okay, so there are two papers which we could say are maybe breakthrough papers, but we'll have to give it time. Next slide, please. One is the PREPANC study. PREPANC is a study which had operable pancreatic cancers. They used surgery followed by gemcitabine single agent, or neoadjuvant chemotherapy with gemcitabine, then chemoradiation. Radiation was in a slightly different schedule. It's a Dutch study, so I think they are fond of hypofractionating. So it was just 36 gray in 15 fractions, followed by surgery, and then again gemcitabine in the adjuvant setting. And this study, next slide, please. This slide, as Dr. Bhavna mentioned, did have a much better R0 resection rate in the patients who received nearly 70% R0 resection rates. And the study did not report, it's a phase 3 study, did not report any major increase in surgical issues. No statistically significant worsening of surgical outcomes with chemoradiation. But yes, the volume of disease, I think Dr. Bhavna, volume of surgery is very important, whether it's a high volume center or not, might make a difference there. The DFS, the distant metastasis free survival, and loco-regional recurrence free survival was better with the pre-op chemoradiation sort of approach. Next slide, please. There was also another. So I think this question we have sort of.
Just want to say that none of us use GEM alone as a neoadjuvant strategy.
Any longer.
Exactly.
A regimen that was used, yeah.
And in with RT also, I think GEM with RT has more toxicity than using a 5-FU based.
The SCALLOP trial showed that, we all of us tend to use capecitabine.
Capecitabine, exactly. So the next study, could you just go to the next slide, please? So this is a much larger study. This is the SWOG study. No, sorry, not larger study. This is another study which had GEM FOLFIRINOX, GEM nab-paclitaxel versus FOLFIRINOX. Now this study is what I think Tilak was alluding to. Dr. Bhavna, this study seems to show that whether you're using FOLFIRINOX or whether you're using GEM nab-pacli, they remain the same. You could switch one for the other if you're using neoadjuvant strategy. Any thoughts on that? And you've already alluded to the BRCA issue. So to add up, would you tailor based on BRCA? Would you want platinum in BRCA positives?
Yes, definitely. So, this patient who had a PAT-CR actually had started with the GEM nab-paclitaxel because performance status was not so good. 70s, I think. This was in London. And then we changed to GEM cisplatin and he had a PAT-CR. So again, you can use either one, but the APACT trial, was slightly, which showed that GEM nab-paclitaxel used in adjuvant setting was not as good as what we are seeing here in the SWOG S1505 study. So it makes me slightly nervous giving GEM nab-paclitaxel. I'd rather go with modified FOLFIRINOX and GEM CAPE, where the data looks slightly more robust.
Okay, GEM CAPE otherwise. Dr. Tilak, at this point of time, would you want a BRCA to be tested when you're treating an operable pancreatic cancer or a borderline operable pancreatic cancer to, stratify patients?
Practically, we have not been doing BRCA upfront so far.
Okay. So there seems to be a lot of data because the olaparib data also in pancreas, not very encouraging, but it is there. There is some data there that, and cisplatin. There is another smaller trial, Dr. Bhavna, which of course I've not put on the slides, for metastatic disease to use HRR or, to look at mutations HRR and decide on using platinum rather than GEM nab-pacli. Your thoughts on that? Now the recommendation seems to be, to use GEM cisplatin rather than GEM nab-pacli. So if you have an HRR, you know the BRCA or HRR, one cohort, what would you use? And if it's unknown, what would you use?
So if it is known, I would definitely go for platinum-based regimen. Again, FOLFIRINOX has oxaliplatin, but I would go with GEM cisplatin because the results are quite good and reserve a 5-FU for second-line setting. Yes, HRD and BRCA are the ones which, have changed our practice. In early setting as well, because BRCA mutation testing germline, including PALB2 as well, is recommended in all patients with pancreatic cancer to look at genetic predisposition and also to drive treatment in metastatic setting.
So if it's unknown, if you have a patient who's not eligible for FOLFIRINOX, your HRR genes are unknown, your 15 genes you don't know, PALB2 is there, BRCA2 is there, somatic status is not known, what would be your choice, GEM nab-pacli or GEM cisplatin?
GEM nab-paclitaxel.
In that situation. Okay. Next slide, please.
Just pardon my ignorance, but what's the turnaround time for an HRR testing? I mean, do we have that much time to wait for the HRR testing? I've not got it done so far, so ma'am, you could.
So 2 weeks actually, and but again, you can switch to GEM cisplatin, which I've done in a couple of patients. Switch the nab-pacli because they would usually just have one dose if you're using the IMPACT day 1, 8, 15 regimen.
So within the second cycle, you could choose. And to add to Dr. Bhavna, if you're sending the HRD score, that takes a longer time. It goes to US. But if you're using HRR, many of our labs are giving the data on those 15 genes, which are the HRR genes. So you would get an HRR gene mutation present or not, you will not get an HRD score, with the Indian homegrown test. But again, now that this point is raised, how comfortable are you, Dr. Bhavna, in switching this with that?
So I think the data with nab-paclitaxel is expensive, and the data, at least in BRCA and PALB2 mutations, is quite strong with the use of platinum with the DNA damage pathway. So I'm very comfortable using it.
You're comfortable.
Platin, yes.
No, I meant switching.
Stone catching data also is quite. So, you could start with GEM alone and then add cisplatin in the second cycle, because once you do a test, I feel if you've ordered a test, we usually counsel patients and say that we may switch. But that happens in 5% of patients. In 95%, you will not switch.
Okay. So if any of my other panelists have joined, and please do give a shout. Can we go to the next slide? So, this was sort of, summary question for, this. Do you think that, pre-operative therapy in operative pancreatic cancer is a breakthrough? Because this session is supposed to be on breakthroughs. So this is something that's happened in the last 2 years. Is this actually a breakthrough? I think I'll start with our surgeon, Gopinath sir. What would you think? Is this a breakthrough? Would you think that giving neoadjuvant pancreas has been very tough to manage? We've really not reached anywhere. Most of our patients relapse within a year, and we have very little to offer after that. And it's a tough disease. But is this a breakthrough? I can't hear, sir. I can't hear, sir.
Yeah, I know we are talking about the breakthrough in a pre-operative setting. If the surgeons who are very familiar with doing a Whipple's procedure for a head lesion, it may not be a breakthrough for them. When we come across, as Bhavna was telling, in the borderline cancers and the bulky tumors, it has really shrunken the tumor and made the lives of the surgeon and the outcome results of the surgical procedures also improved. This is how we look at it as a surgeon. The presentation of the patient is more important, and then the type of tumor what we are seeing in the head lesion is more important in assessing whether the preoperative therapy has brought in a big change.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was like the very wonderful perspective that it's a breakthrough, but not for all patients and maybe not for all surgeons. So I think that's the sort of gist of it. Dr. Bhavna, your final word on it. Chemotherapy, chemoradiation in this set of patients, they are difficult patients. Even operable pancreatic cancer patients are difficult patients as far as survival parameters are concerned. What would you say?
I think now we are debating total neoadjuvant therapy in resectable pancreas. So that is a big breakthrough, because, earlier we used to debate in borderline resectable. Now borderline we've noted, we are giving it. But now I think the future is giving total neoadjuvant therapy, and the Alliance trial, which is giving FOLFIRINOX followed by radiotherapy,
yes,
will have answers to those questions. So maybe patients will need everything before they go for surgery.
If we could give FOLFIRINOX to everybody. So that's a little tough chemotherapy.
It's a big challenge, yeah.
It's a little tough chemotherapy. So we'll go on to the next clinical scenario. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, this is from the just continuation from the last topic. This is a Japanese trial. I had this question for Dr. Shailesh. Next slide, please. So why is it that there are large phase 3 randomized Japanese trials which say that pre-op radiation is good, and Japanese are supposed to be very good surgeons? That's what we always hear. I mean, I have personally not interacted with any Japanese surgeon myself, but that's what we always hear. The surgeons go there for their fellowships, and yet we don't accept Japanese data. We say no, we want American data. Why is that? I wanted Dr. Shailesh to answer that question, but I'll ask Tilak now. Tilak, why do you feel that we switch? We look at the West, we don't look at the East?
No, but if you see the gastric and the G junction cancers, definitely we look at the especially with the surgeon's perspective. The Japanese perspective is definitely better. So I don't know if I can say why do we look at the Western data for surgical outcomes.
But most of it is, Bharat, not interpretable, not applicable. We've looked at the S1 story. It's not applicable to most of the populations. And plus, we are never able to, none of the Western or Asian
And
other
some of surgical, this thing, like
are able to replicate those results.
Their D2 resection, their D3 resection is supposed to be
Yeah, but you never
ideal.
replicate those actually.
Dr. Gopinath wants to add something.
Yeah. See, the replica of the Japanese results are little difficult, as Bhavana was mentioning it. S1 studies and other thing we know through the gastric cancer. We have all visited the various centers in Japan. Learning technical skills is a great thing. Reproducing the same results with their technique, we are not able to do it. I think if Shailesh has got a different opinion, but my opinion is after seeing the Japanese surgeon, though East doesn't meet West in so many cases, including the gastric cancers. Today we know that we are looking at especially the Taiwan and South Korea, where the surgical skills have been to the highest extent. Still we have got our own way of whether can we reproduce the technique. But some of the techniques we can reproduce when we undergo the training in either in the United Kingdom or in the United States. We know that we can reproduce the result. That is the main difference in thinking in the minds of majority of the surgeons.
Okay. With that, although there is a lot of data, as Dr. Bhavna said, total neoadjuvant therapy in pancreas, and that may be the next breakthrough coming out in pancreas, at least for young fit patients with operable pancreatic cancers. Maybe we would go to chemotherapy or chemotherapy plus radiation in these patients. With that, shall we go on to the next slide, please? So again, total neoadjuvant therapy in rectal cancer, TNT. Next slide. We had two great trials coming out in this arena. Dr. Tilak, what is your current strategy for T3, more than T3 or more than equal to T3 with node positive carcinoma rectum? So we're moving from TNT in pancreas to TNT in rectum. So what is your current standard of care? Let us see if we are moving forward.
So we the standard of care so far used to be NACCRT followed by surgery, and thereafter if it's T3 or more, give them adjuvant chemotherapy. However, few of the patients we have given total neoadjuvant therapy. Though I can't recall if somebody had a pathological CR, but definitely we've been able to complete the entire course of therapy before surgery.
Dr. Bhavna, there has always been a controversy about adding oxaliplatin in rectum regarding, the weightage of evidence regarding whether, there is actually not a great randomized data of oxaliplatin versus no oxaliplatin in rectum. So where do you place the oxaliplatin when you're treating today?
So I think you mean with chemotherapy, not with radiotherapy?
Not with radiotherapy, with chemotherapy.
Because all the radiation were negative. So basically, the ADORE trial actually does show, which randomized to CAPOX versus, that FOLFOX, which did show that, there was a disease-free survival benefit, which was published recently only in rectal cancers. You're absolutely right that we have extrapolated stuff from colon cancer. The ADORE trial did show that. And I think total neoadjuvant therapy in rectal cancer is totally practice changing. We've been doing this for quite some time, at least in CRM positive. Even when I was in Tata Hospital, I remember we gave FOLFIRINOX to young, in their 20s, 30s, followed by long course chemoradiation. Because what I learned there was, it was very difficult to give FOLFIRINOX with CRM threatened patients after long course chemoradiation because of neutropenia. So, we've been using it, individualizing it in our patients because the tumors that we see in India are completely different from the Western population.
So I think Dr. Bhavna has actually answered another question that's coming up regarding the sequence. So would you, change? You said you're still using the chemoradiation with capecitabine, Dr. Tilak. Would you change now? And if you change, what would your sequence be? Long course or short course? Chemotherapy before the radiation or chemotherapy after the radiation? And then I'll ask our surgeon, to give us the problems with both these approaches.
So first question regarding the radiation, short course or long course, we are still following the long course radiation when given the neoadjuvant setting. We are not doing the short course as of now. Especially with total the TNT in rectal carcinoma, I think long course probably has a higher chances of getting a pathological CRH. As regards the sequencing, so far it was initially chemoradiation followed by chemotherapy. Though the reverse, I don't have data upfront to say whether the reverse of using chemotherapy followed by radiation followed by surgery is there a trial for that? I may be less informed.
Dr. Gopinath, if we, move to total neoadjuvant therapy, what do you think are the challenges, in the sense that if we give the radiation first, it's always very difficult to give chemotherapy after that? Dr. Bhavna has really, mentioned that it's even very difficult to give FOLFOX after long course chemoradiation, let alone FOLFIRINOX. So if you have given the choice, what would you want? A person who has had a short course chemotherapy and then chemotherapy like Rapido, that is 5 fractions and then 6 cycles of Capox, and then the patient comes to your table nearly 5 months after finishing the short course RT? Or do you want a patient who has taken 6 cycles of chemotherapy and a long course chemoradiation and comes to you around 6 weeks after finishing the long course radiotherapy? What would be, technically easy for you?
See, we all had a good experience of CTRT protocols, and we know that we had gained the experience from that. Wait for 4 to 6 weeks, then plan for surgery. We have not found much difference. And as you are mentioning it to you, we will be more comfortable with the chemotherapy rather than chemo followed by radiation, followed by chemotherapy and other thing, because the morbidity of the procedure increases, because patient will have a lot of quality of life for the patient comes down most of the times, and especially in a borderline resectable lesion where the margins of resection and sphincter control will become a major problem. And some of these patients will also have radiation mucositis and other complications, which makes the morbidity much more than the routine things which we practiced after CTRT followed by surgery.
If the patient comes to your table, say 5 months after the radiation, does that make an impact? 4 weeks is fine, but if you're going to give radiation first and then FOLFIRINOX and then they come to you, how does that how does that change your difficulty?
No, we always reassess this patient regarding the surgical procedure. What is the response? If the response to the previous treatment is really good, that should not make much difference. But morbidity to the patient increases because most of the thing what we have noticed is post-operative albumin levels, which makes the morbidity very high rather than anything else. This is the one observation we have made over the years, so that when we have two modalities of treatment coming for surgery as the last morbidity is always increases. Even the leak rates are much higher than the conventional procedures we do.
Can we go to the next slide? I think
giving FOLFIRINOX after radiation may be difficult. I agree. But how about Capox? We have been giving Capox post CCRT, and that has been by and large been more tolerable. And
the Rapido actually used that backbone, that is short course RT, that sort of protocol, 5 fractions. So 25 gray, 5 fractions per 5 fractions of 5 gray each, and then followed by Capox or FOLFOX, and then a TME. Or just our usual capecitabine-based chemoradiation followed by adjuvant Capox or FOLFOX. This is one approach, the Rapido approach. Can I have the next 2 slides? So the Rapido approach did have a reduction in both locoregional failures and a reduction in the distant metastasis. So there was increase in the distant metastasis. Next slide. So next slide. The PRODIGE 23, the other study, and I think that's been active on the chat box also. This study actually used preoperative chemoradiotherapy, the long course, 50 gray for 5 weeks plus capecitabine, and then 7 weeks later excision, or 6 cycles of FOLFIRINOX, which is a very, very intense regime, followed by chemoradiation, the same long course chemo RT, and surgery. Now these are the two sort of approaches, but there is no head-on comparison. So with the lack of head-on comparison for a TNT, which is the way to go, would you feel, Dr. Bhavna, the short course RT and Capox, or a very intense FOLFIRINOX and a long course radiation?
I think my general approach is, when patients come with these tumors, the discomfort, bleeding PR, some of these issues, sitting they have a lot of issues. So giving just one cycle of Folfox actually to begin with, or Folfirinox, just takes care of most of their acute symptoms that they are having, the severe pain because of anal spasm and other things. So our thinking is we go for neoadjuvant chemotherapy. I would rescan with an MRI and then have a discussion with the radiation oncologist. If the CRM is still threatened, we would go for long course chemoradiation, again a 7 week gap, and then maybe think about non-operative management if the patient has had a complete CR on MRI scan, or go for surgery. So usually that is the sequence we go, and I would go for Folfox or Capox if the patient is not fit for Folfirinox, which some of our patients are not. No targeted therapy anywhere; it's not indicated.
Actually, there are two questions which were coming up, which Dr. Bhavna has already skirted through. So the first question is, if we are starting with chemotherapy, how often would you image? That is always in rectal cancers. Some of them may not respond, and we would be giving chemotherapy for, say, the Prodige gave 6 cycles, and you could end up with a non-response. So how often would you image? And is there any sort of marker you would look for for non-response?
So I normally do a clinical exam for low mid rectum, and also symptom is the best marker, for patients. And if a CEA or CA 19.9, either one of them, if it is high, I would repeat that and look for a drop. And if there's any concern, I would rescan after 4
We want to do two things. I have sent you one PPT which has only the abstract winners. I have put in WhatsApp group of all the awards I put together and sent you. Okay.
Thank you. So, is there any role of getting MSI testing done to resect? Vinayak, I think you have to mute.
You can run the show. Okay.
Vinayak, I think you have to mute.
Right, next. Once I announce Stiffy is a winner and she'll present, you stop the things. There are 2 more awards. When Stiffy finishes her presentation, then we will announce these 2 awards, and then we'll go to Govind Babu sir.
Vinayak may have to.
You're there on the site, right?
So again, Bharat, I would do MSI in all colorectal, like you do BRCA and pancreas. I think MSI should be done in all colorectal cancer patients, which is part of the guidelines, mainly for genetic predisposition. But in neoadjuvant strategy, I don't think it will guide the decision making, but there is some data, phase 2 data, that, in MSI high, immunotherapy is being used.
Okay, so I think we have come to the end of our time, so I'm not doing the last discussion, but I'll end with the last question to Tilak. Tilak, if you've done a total neoadjuvant therapy, and as Dr. Bhavna says, we are looking at a non-operative, we are going Haber Gamma way, we are not going to operate. What would you do? How would you follow up the patient? As a medical oncologist, Dr. Amish has already put a very astute comment there in the chat box. So, as a medical oncologist, how would you follow up? Would you be comfortable following up? Would you send your radiation oncologist as a surgeon going to follow up? Because it's a sort of very risky and a very tough decision for us to say we're not operating, we're going to follow you up on clinical. So what would be your parameters there?
So first things first, I think a couple of things is patient selection. Which are those patients who are willing to not operate? I don't think we can use across all ages and across all the things. So one is patient selection. Secondly, what Dr. Bhavna said, symptom guided. That's very important. If patient has a very good symptom response, and the scans also show very good response, maybe that can be one of the criteria, as well as the biomarkers which are there. As coming to the physical scans, I think initially probably every 3 months and an MRI, which can probably give us a clue what's happening, taking the post-therapy MRI as a baseline would be the one. And definitely the decision would be in a tumor board. It will not be my single decision alone. It would be in a tumor board, so that, that the whole team agrees that yes, this patient can be followed up for some more time.
Bharat.
And with that, I think my time is up.
Bharat, last comment.
Yes,
See,
sir.
you are telling that making it not resectable, and say that we'll follow it up, especially in rectal cancers. A good trial dissection is always mandatory. At the end of your treatment, do a good MRI, follow it up, See, majority of the time we should be able to do the debulking of the primary tumor that brings in a lot of different quality of life in these patients. So one trial of a good dissection has to be given after all these modalities of treatment. Even the response to the treatment is not very good.
Point taken. So I think we had some discussion, on very important medical oncology papers on immunotherapy in rectum and G junction, which Dr. Raja covered beautifully, I think, but we don't have time for that. And so I think the organizers have sent me a message saying that the time is up. And so I will sort of wind up here with, any sort of breakthrough comments that Dr. Bhavna wants to add as a part of immunotherapy in GI cancers in general, so that will cover that.
So, Bharat, I'm not a big fan of immunotherapy because
That's why I asked you.
So, and with the Atezo, with anti-drug antibody, again, that has muddied the whole thing in HCC as well. So for me, the biggest breakthrough was pancreas cancer, BRCA, and 55-month overall survival. And also one thing which is very important to all of us is, MSI high gastric and G junction tumors, where I think, surgery may be good enough. We do not need to give even adjuvant chemotherapy. The curve is right up, survival above 80%, which we don't achieve with anything else. So I think for me, that is the most important thing. And I think as a group, we should try and collect the data prospectively on this.
So I think with that, I'll hand over the mic to the organizers. My time is up for now. Unfortunately, we couldn't have more detailed discussion on immunotherapy, but I think that happens in every conference.